Welcome, 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 welcome. This is Professor Roundtree, George Washington University School of Business, for our first in a number of online lectures. This one relates to Chapter 1, which will be broken up into 3 parts. Some of it is broken up in 3 parts because it kind of makes sense to kind of pace the material, but also too, it's a function of the limitation of some of the software. I've already tried recording some lectures and you get through 25-30 minutes only to find out there's a glitch. So I'm breaking it up each chapter into 3 distinct parts. Anyway, to start it out, we're going to talk about Chapter 1, and Chapter 1 is the basic introduction to what marketing really is. And essentially what marketing is, it's really trying to create and capture customer value, trying to satisfy an underlying unmet need by providing some benefits that are in some way different from what competitors might be offering. So in this chapter, we'll talk a little bit about, we'll define formally what marketing is, and I think we even talked about some of that the first few days of class. We'll actually define what it is, talk about the actual marketplace and what these customer needs are, and kind of contrast the difference between needs and wants. And then we'll talk about how do you design a customer-driven marketing strategy. And coupled with that, we'll also then talk about how do you actually have an integrated plan and program. Integrated meaning, each hand knows what the other one is doing. The underlying strategies that we will talk about in this course are the traditional 4 Ps. That's the product itself, which also includes packaging, but that's not a P. It's product, place, which is distribution, price, and promotion. And so we're going to focus mainly on the 4 Ps until we get to services. And when we start talking about services, we're going to add the additional 3 Ps of service, which is people, process, and physical evidence. So now put that on the side for now and just focus on the traditional 4 Ps related to physical products. And then we'll talk about this whole notion of relationship building. Here we're talking about trying to build relationships rather than being what I call a transaction-oriented kind of business, where you're just focusing on getting the next deal done. You really should be trying to focus on getting a relationship built, and that's what leads to brand loyalty. And then we'll morph into talking a little bit about what's going on right now in the marketplace, mainly as relates to technology, the application and use of technology to create products and services, promote products and services, as well as deliver specifically online-based types of services. So what is marketing? I think we talked about this, a process by which companies create value for customers. Again, that's the underlying hope that we're going to try to achieve. Create something of value to them that satisfies an unmet need. So think about it. It's always going to be about value. Focus on value and hopefully relationship building. If you deliver and you create and deliver value, and you could do it in a way where you are building a relationship and you keep monitoring what the unmet needs are, that's a loyal customer, and that's how you actually build a sustainable business. Now, this process model here, it's a flow. Anytime we have a process, it's a flow, it's a logical order that these things go in. This process model would be something that would be a good question as an essay question on an exam, just to hopefully have you demonstrate your knowledge and understand exactly what's going on. So just take it from left to right here. We're really first trying to understand what the needs are. And typically when we say what the needs are, think about doing some kind of market research, essentially asking people what it is that they need to solve problems. But the first thing you need to do is to figure out what market space you want to be in. So for example, if you decided you wanted to create a social network to compete with Facebook and Google Plus and some of the others, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're going to do a niche site like a LinkedIn did. But you'd say to yourself, what is it that's going on in the marketplace and what needs are not unmet? Broad-based social networking, I'd probably say Facebook and Google Plus, they have that covered. But maybe you need to think about a niche site that might be a social networking site, where you can drill down and satisfy the needs of that specific target market. So you figure out exactly where the market opportunity might be there, and then you design a customer-driven market strategy. And what that basically means is that in conjunction with talking to your customers, you figure out not only what type of product or service they want, but you figure out the pricing that they're comfortable with that delivers some value to them. And then you connect with them on a platform using promotion in a way that drives them to consume your product. And that's where we get to this middle box here. There's an entire chapter that talks about integrated marketing communications, and that's talking about communication integration, sponsorship, traditional advertising on TV, radio, and print. So we generally talk about IMC when it comes to promotion. This concept here refers to integrated marketing program related to all the other P's. So you have a product, the physical makeup of the product, that is consistent with what you were actually looking to provide to your customer. If you're an upscale brand, you need to have very good, exceptional raw materials. So higher, better levels of silk or cotton or whatever the actual underlying raw material might be. You sell it in a distribution place where people shop who want to buy upscale types of items. If you are a super premium brand, you're going to be at Tyson's Corners Mall. You're not going to want to be at some of the lower end malls. So you have to look at all of your P's, your pricing, your promotion, your distribution strategy, as well as your product, and making sure that there is some consistency to deliver the value that your target customers expect. And then hopefully you can build a profitable relationship with these folks, essentially creating some sort of expectation as far as what you're going to deliver, and then make sure you deliver on it. There's nothing worse than having great promotion and advertising, basically pumping up the product that you're going to have and how great it's going to be, how different it's going to be from all of other offerings out there, only to fall short when people actually look at the physical product. You see that a lot with online experiences, actually, in terms of that disconnect. A lot of fanfare, a lot of pomp and circumstances, online companies having a lot of money, spending money on Super Bowl ads, building up expectation. And then when you get to the site, it's slow, it's sluggish, it just doesn't work for the customer. So whatever the expectation is that you're trying to build, make sure you're able to deliver on it. And at the end of the day, the thought is that if you can continue to deliver whatever the value that customers are looking for, value meaning the value proposition, satisfying the unmet needs, on a consistent basis at a fair price relative to their competitors, you can build relationships with them. Now, many of you probably remember from your introductory psychology class where they talked about Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. And Maslow talks about some of the basic needs here. The ones where he talks about the physical needs, having food, clothing, shelter, safety, and those kinds of things. Most products that we buy today don't necessarily fall into that basic need, although for some of us having a cell phone might feel like a basic need. But it is a communications tool. I would probably say cell phone service is probably more of a want. Some of you might disagree. But by and large, unless you need it for safety reasons, and some parents will buy it for their children for that reason. I mean, talk about younger children. They'll buy it for them just because they want to feel safe themselves, and that if the child gets lost, they're able to kind of phone home. The underlying demands that we actually want, typically those are going to be the ones where, or the things where people buy it because they want to make a statement about their purchases. Most of us know that if we want to drive from point A to point B and purchase a car, we could probably spend about $12,000, $15,000 for a car, but there are many people who choose to spend an awful lot more, multiples of that. So the underlying need, if we can talk about that as transportation, when we start getting into the premium upscale brands, those go way beyond needs and are really more demand-based in that they tend to say something about who we are. So getting at more that higher level of actualization that Maslow talked about in the psychology literature. Now, anytime we think about satisfying customer needs, we have to understand first what are the offerings in the marketplace. And the market offerings basically anybody who's out there trying to sell a product or service that satisfies an unmet need. So one of the first things you have to do is you have to understand what the options your consumer has compared to what they need to have to consume your product. So for example, always think about your competitors in terms of who your customers, who you believe your customers are, who they use as an alternative to using you. And I think I mentioned this in class a few times. 20 years ago, Pepsi and Coca-Cola would never have thought that bottled water or water of any kind would be a legitimate substitute for their sugar water. Now, as we know, many people through changes in cultural and social lifestyle issues, becoming a little bit more health conscious, they're buying stuff that has less sugar or no sugar in it. And so that's why Dasani was purchased by Coke and Aquafina was purchased by Pepsi. Main reason being because they saw their market share being chipped away because of our changes in our lifestyle. And the concept of marketing myopia here, it really talks about how there are some companies, many times technology companies, who think that they know everything that they need to know about consumers, which is very little. All they know is that they have the best technology. I think we had a conversation about this in class, but I think Apple seems to be moving in that direction where they're creating products for the sake of creating products. And they're not making a really good connection between how these new innovations, for example, the iPhone 5C and the other model, the 5S they have coming out, I'm not sure I really know or understand how they really are making that distinction as far as satisfying a specific need for a specific target market. I believe one is for more what I would call value oriented, but most people, I think, in terms of what I've read, don't believe the price point kind of hits the value oriented type of customers. But companies who are myopic, that have myopia, generally they're focusing more on building the products that they build, and they don't really care to a certain extent what consumers actually want. Not a good idea. So if we think about these needs in the marketplace, it's going to be some kind of balance. If you look at it as a scale, where customers are delivering some sort of value in a sense where they're bringing to the transaction or exchange essentially money. On the other hand, if you happen to be the marketer yourself, you have to create a certain level of expectation. So if I told you you could spend 2 nights at the Ritz-Carlton, you probably have a very, very high level expectation. They spend an inordinate amount of money delivering on that expectation promise. From the furnishings that they have and the linens that they have in the room, to the services that they have at the concierge desk, to room service, all the things that they have in that hotel are geared toward people who value pretty much unlimited customer satisfaction. And so they price it accordingly. So that's why you're going to pay multiples of what you would pay for a traditional hotel when you stay at some place like the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons. So the underlying concept here is this notion of exchange. You probably remember this from basic econ. Exchange basically means that what are we going to give up in exchange for the dollars that customers are going to pay us? And those things that we provide, these bundles of benefits, have to satisfy some unmet need. And it should satisfy an unmet need in a way that's different compared to anybody else. If you're satisfying that need in the exact same way, if you're new to the marketplace, you better be a little bit cheaper. If you're premium priced to the market, you better deliver on these extra benefits that people will expect. So when we think about what's going on in the marketplace, and we can kind of argue that we can lump all consumers in this little red box here, and that all suppliers, and suppliers are really, more manufacturers. Let's say, for example, Pepsi. Pepsi makes a wide variety or a line of products that we consume, some with caffeine, some that just have sugar, they're diet-based, whatever the product in your preference might be. And so their ultimate goal is to figure out what's going on in the marketplace, in the environment, that would allow them to sell their product in a way that is different from Coke and some of the others. So for example, this whole notion of environmental forces, I think I mentioned a few slides ago, where Pepsi realized, and Coke did the same thing, realized that they were losing some market share to people organizations that were selling water or lower calorie types of beverages. They've always had diet soda, but they didn't have water. And because they looked at some of the things that were going on here in these environmental forces, mainly social and cultural trends, moving more toward a healthy lifestyle, they realized that not only them, but their competitors like Coca-Cola were looking at coming up with additional products that satisfies that need. At the very same time, these market intermediaries, your retailers and the like, they saw changes in demand for certain types of products. And so what they wound up doing was changing the composition and allocation of their shelf space. So all in all, both the intermediaries and the suppliers are looking at what's going on in the marketplace and figuring out how can we best satisfy the demand that is actually out there for consumers for beverages. In this particular case, we saw that the whole make versus buy decision making took place, where Coke decided it made more sense to acquire Dasani rather than try to manufacture water from scratch, in essence. And Pepsi did the same thing with Aquafina. So when we think about marketing, and many of you are marketing majors, some of you are not, but marketing management is a discipline. And when we say marketing management, we're really talking about someone who is making strategic decisions about how to sell certain products and services to certain target markets. Now, a step before that, however, is always going to be which one of those particular markets should we actually go after. And so now we want to take a few minutes to talk about segmentation and targeting. And segmentation is a pretty common concept. I think most people sort of understand it. But the thing I want to make sure you understand, though, for sure, is that we segment markets based on consumers' behaviors and desires. We do not segment markets based on products. I know sometimes people think that. So what we want to talk about is how do we segment markets, meaning segment markets of people or organizations. We can think about, for example, going back to the cola example. If you segment the market based on people's healthy lifestyles, at a bare minimum, you're going to have the sugar-based products and the non-sugar-based products. You also have some consumers who love caffeine and some who can't tolerate caffeine. And so that's why you have those different products where you can get either Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi and regular Coke and regular Pepsi, caffeine or caffeine-free. And then you have other segments of the market that really enjoy more of a flavoring to it. So you have the cherry versions or the vanilla versions of it. So segmenting the market is breaking up the market. Targeting, on the other hand, refers to actually deciding which segment you want to go after. And when we say go after, we mean putting together a marketing plan with the P's, deciding what kind of product, how are you going to price it, how are you going to distribute it, and then how are you going to promote it. And at the end of the day, the goal is to deliver some sort of value proposition. And that basically means the benefits of values a company promises to deliver. And again, it has to satisfy an unmet need. Now, in the next section of this chapter, we're going to talk a little bit about and explore some of the marketing management orientations and some other concepts. And so what I'll do is I'll see you on the other side of this video. Part 2.